All right, boys. So I wanted to ask you boys what you think about Uber.
What do I think about Uber? I feel like in the early days, prices got quite low for transport, and now they're back to what they always
Where
were.
they were, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew I had this question ready for you because I wanted to see what you thought, and I did think there might be a little bit of an awkward pause to gather your thoughts. I haven't really hit you up before, but yeah. So
Yeah, not something I've given a lot of thought to.
No.
Well, it started off as an introductory, like cheaper option than a normal taxi, and it was deregulated, and it caused a lot of issues with the taxi industry. But I think, as Smitty just said there, the prices now have gone to the level of a normal taxi, or whether normal taxis have dropped their prices. But
so competition, they had competition, right?
yes,
And taxi industry had to change what they were doing, having
Yes.
maybe a full monopoly of the system.
yep, and offering a shit service.
Yep.
They had a monopoly, and they were offering a shit service.
So the reason I ask is because, have you guys heard of the gig economy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the gig economy, right, is basically independent workers, contractors, temporaries, casual workers, and Uber fit into that sort of category. They are the sort of the epitome of the gig worker where, yeah, they're sort of a subcontractor. They don't have any initial, they don't have sort of ties. They're not signing. I
They're
think
not
they
sort
do.
of like working 9 till 5, or it's if you're an Uber driver, you just do what you want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, they can sort of come and go. They're not, I think they do sign an agreement with Uber, but they don't sign a worker's contract. So initially, you know, I'm a big man for the worker. Initially, I was thinking Uber, you know, they're really exploiting these people. That, you know, they're maybe not paying them enough. They're not, you know, they're not giving them any conditions. They're using their own cars. They're paying their own petrol. And I thought that's, you know, shouldn't they working for this company? They're making this company money. But I was kind of thinking, and this is a segue into what we want to talk about today, is sort of freedoms and the ability to not do what you want, but have the ability to earn money the way you want, sort of medical freedom, etc. But so I was looking into sort of the gig economy, and it really got me thinking about how I used to think this was really tough for these Uber workers. You know, they're busting their asses. They're, you know, working for the man. They're not getting paid what they should. But really, in the end, it suits the people that are working there to work this way. So one of the examples that I was thinking about was, say you sign up for Uber as a driver. I go to the airport all the time. I can click on and go, oh, all right, if there's a trip that's coming up, I can subsidise my short drive or long drive to the airport by picking someone up, taking them there, go to the airport, do what I need to do, or go into the city. And that's subsidised. Say you're a university student and you need to go a place, you can pick someone up along the way and subsidise some of the cost or offset some of the cost of travel, you know, whatever. It just allows people the freedom to be able to work in an environment that suits them. So I don't know if you've seen, and I know it's the US and California, but I don't know if you've seen this AB5 legislation or bill that's been passed in the US,
No.
California. So it's effectively doing what I was sort of thinking that Uber previously did, was exploit their workers. So this AB5 bill pretty much is essentially a ban on freelance work. You have to be part of a company to work. So the unintended consequence of that is it was aimed at Uber paying their people enough, but the unintended consequence of that is then it worked, you couldn't subcontract PTs, for example. We've just had a PT on in the last episode. They couldn't freelance and just, they have to work for a company. They have to be signed up for a company. And truckers, so the other one is the truckers. So they're having real issues now in California with the truckers because they're sort of independent subcontractors doing their thing, but they've got to then be tied to a company. So then a company then has full monopoly over that industry
And that employee.
and that employee, and they don't have the freedom. There we go. We got there. It took me 5 minutes, but we got to the start of what we're going to talk about today. But having that freedom to be able to work in an area that suits you. So this big gig economy that's going on, like you pay for, Airtasker and these other things where you get online and you pay for a small amount of work and you go and do it, you freelance and you come and go as you please. And I know it's different in the US to here, but they're hailing this bill in the US as a success, and they're trying to implement it over the whole country.
Did you say California? Oh, big surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
I guess it's just an example of over the last 3 or 4 years, well, you could probably even say over the last, since September 11 happened, there have been incremental snatches away of our small civil liberties and freedoms.
Mm.
And this is just another flow-on effect of it. And I mean, the last couple of years with things happened and there were all these denials of freedoms. And I think, if we're talking about freedom today, and what you're talking about there, Jonesy, is humanity needs freedom to encourage prosperity. So freedom is required for creativity, for productivity, for exploration, for all these sort of things, discovery, for travel. People need to be free to achieve these things, and it's a part of humanity.
Free to work, free to transact. Like if you have we can talk about that later, but if you have the freedom to transact taken away from you, you're in big trouble, aren't you?
Yeah.
Someone freezes your bank accounts, or if you look at the banking system in the future changing, whatever that may look like. Today, you've purchased too much meat.
Yeah.
We've looked at your online account. You've purchased too much meat. You're going to hurt the climate.
Yeah.
We're shutting that down.
Well, we've read something on your social media that we disapprove of.
Yep.
So we're closing your account for a week.
Well, that yeah, and that may be.
I'll tell you guys a story that happened to me. So I got a couple of years ago. Some obviously very big things happened in the world, and there was an emerging threat that came out, and I unfortunately went down the rabbit hole one night. I ended up on Reddit. You guys been to Reddit before?
I wasn't
really that familiar with Reddit, but it's obviously just a place where people go to share ideas and converse about things. And there's on Reddit, there's things called subreddits. And so I ended up on the Reddit subreddit of Australia or Australasia. And there was a whole bunch of people talking about this emerging situation that was beginning to unfold. And there was a lot of hysteria, a lot of, we're all going to die and the world's going to go to hell and all this sort of stuff. And I sort of thought, I'd been reading a bit about what was going on because like everyone else, I was interested. And in the early days, we didn't really know very much about what was happening. Mm-hmm. So as a good citizen, I went onto the Australian government website and I went onto the Australian Bureau of Statistics and I read some statistics. I thought, this will give me the picture. Statistics will get me out of trouble. And I went on and it essentially said that survival rate of this said emergency was in excess of 99.7%, and the vast majority of the people who were seeming to succumb to it were over the age of natural life expectancy. So for me, as a man in my early 40s, who I consider to be in reasonably good health, I thought, well, I'm going to be okay.
Yep.
So I essentially went online and I said, look, people, let's not freak out here. It appears that the mortality rate for this is only 0.3%, and that the demographic of people who are dying are generally very elderly and with 3 or 4 comorbidities. And I linked a link to the Australian Government Bureau of Statistics website to the bottom, because I don't like to shoot from the hip. I always like to if I'm going to make a post, I like it to sound reasonably credible. So I thought, this has got .gov.au at the end of it. Credible. Got an email a week later. I had been banned from Reddit for life.
Oh, shit.
That post. Not a warning, not a strike. For misinformation, I got banned for life.
But you've actually quoted from an official government website.
But I also said, hey, people, let's not freak out. This isn't going to be too bad. I think what got me is at the end, I also said maybe we should focus on eating well, exercise, and getting out in the fresh air and sunlight. I think that was my closing sentence.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one that may have got me banned for life.
Wow.
Freedom of speech. Can't have it anymore.
Well, I mean, this is what we're talking about today, but, you know, I love my country. I love Western democracy, but I feel like we're just getting squeezed. And like Rue said a minute ago, I feel like we're losing more and more like personal liberties all the time.
Yeah. And suppression of liberty or freedom in general happens incrementally. So, you know, it starts off with, you know, let's stay inside for 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you're being denied entry into a restaurant because you haven't got a jab.
Yeah.
You know, so these things happen incrementally, and you can compare it to other situations like in other European countries in the late 1930s and leading up to World War II. Like, these are things that were incremental. People were denied entry into a restaurant because of their race or religion. Mm-hmm. They were then labelled with a brand on their chest that identified them in public. Their houses were then stormed and their personal items were taken, and then before they knew it, they were in dire straits in prison camps for whatever reason. So these little things happen incrementally, and I think our generation, we've never had to fight for our freedom. So our grandfathers fought in world wars under the guise of fighting for freedom and against whatever tyrannical regime was threatening the world at the time. And we've enjoyed the luxury of freedom for many, many decades. And I think it's only just recently that a few of us have gone, fuck, hang on, we've woken up and gone, my freedoms are being attacked here and they're being threatened. And never before has that happened. And I think, unfortunately, in modern times, we've got so many modern conveniences and and distractions that we aren't seeing them being eroded away. You just listen to people like Yonomi Park. She's been on Rogan. She's been on Zuby's podcast. She was a survivor of North Korea, and listen to her speak, and it's just so moving. She survived, like eating like dead corpses on the side of the road and rats and stuff like that. Like people just dying in the street from starvation in North Korea, and she got out of there and she's telling the story. But we've never experienced anything like that.
No,
and we take freedom for granted.
We do, yeah, absolutely. And the thing about freedom is all these small freedoms that you lose, you never get them back.
That's right.
They don't ever seem to come back at the end. They go, it's for the large part. Once you give it up, it's gone.
Yeah.
So, I guess all of us are a little bit concerned about where things are going, and it's just interesting to have a chat about it, isn't it?
Do you think we look back in a few years and think what we did then was a little bit crazy? We did a little bit too much. Do you think people look back on those? Will look back and say, okay, that was probably an overreach.
Well, I mean, if we go down the medical freedom rabbit hole maybe first, because it seems like we're sort of leading into that, there's some really interesting stuff coming out sort of in the last few months, which I've found very interesting. One of them is that Pfizer, who obviously released one of the two most popular vaccines, the other one being Moderna after AstraZeneca was sort of taken off the market, have said now that they knew that their vaccine would not stop transmission.
Yep.
So they've deposed a lady in court, whatever it's called, who was a higher executive or whatever, and she said, we knew that this vaccine would not stop transmission. So one of the main reasons that they gave at the time for, let's look at how we went here. We had this thing happen at the start. We all got worried, so we said, okay, we're going to flatten the curve. We'll do some contact tracing. Contact tracing came into travel restrictions, which came into lockdowns, which came into vaccine passports, which came into QR codes, which came into vaccine mandates, which came into job losses.
Incremental stages.
Incremental.
That went quick, though.
That went really quick. But a lot of it was based on be a good citizen, go and get your jab so that you don't infect an old person who dies.
Media hysteria, too.
Media hysteria. Now, unfortunately, as Joe Public, we're not given access to any of the data that's coming out at the time. None of it. Like, it took a long court case over in America recently for Pfizer to release all of their paperwork that showed reasoning for what they'd done, and they said they wanted to release it over a 75-year period. Now, to me, that's an alarm bell.
Yeah.
But one of the primary things that these mandates were supposedly based on was this social contract of don't make your neighbour sick, don't go out and make your co-workers sick. Well, if it's not stopping transmission, I think that's a whole different ballgame. And I think a lot of people would have had different feelings about their willingness or unwillingness to go and receive the jab.
Yep.
So to me, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
So another one was when we had the state of emergency in Western Australia, we were never ever privy to what their decision-making process is. What information was the government using to constantly say, we're in a state of emergency? They would always say, oh, it's subject to medical advice, but they would never release what the advice was. So it just, to me, seemed a little bit undemocratic. Like, I like the scientific method of debate, polite debate, where there's two sides, and what the truth side will always obliterate the side that isn't true.
Yeah.
That's what debate is designed for.
Yeah.
And it seems like these days, particularly in the aspect of medical freedom, we're not allowed to debate things anymore. We're not allowed to go on and someone says, oh, well, hang on a sec. What about this? There's just the truth, Anthony Fauci, I am science, and everything else is suppressed.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I like to hear both sides and I like to make up an opinion for myself.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's not where we are sort of going at the moment, which is, it's a bit alarming for me.
Well, and that whole concept, mate, of getting that experimental medication based on the fact of you protecting others and like looking after grandma and that sort of thing is one of the manipulative tools that governments or leaders or powers that be use to convince us or to take away those freedoms that we have. So, remember after September 11 happened, the US government brought in that Homeland Security Department, and they also brought in, which allowed them to then massively surveil emails.
The Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act. Yeah, that's probably it. The Patriot Act allowed them to pretty much invade personal communication and that sort of thing. It's those sort of things that, and they use the example of safety and keeping everyone safe and well. That's why we're bringing this in, or the what's good for the masses. This is good for everyone sort of thing, and those sort of things sort of brainwash people into thinking, oh, I've got to do this, but you don't. you have as a human being a right to refuse.
Up to a point.
Yeah, up to a point. Yeah, I've looked at when we prepared for this discussion today. I had a look at a YouTube channel called Academy of Ideas, and some of their episodes I thoroughly enjoy. They're really sort of deep, and they touch on things that we've just talked about without actually referring to it directly, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But one of the beautiful quotes that I've read from it, and this is they quoted Albert Camus, which is a French philosopher, and he won the 1957 Nobel Prize for Literature.
Camus,
is it?
Yeah, Albert Camus.
Freedom is the air we cannot do without, that we breathe without even noticing it, until the time comes when, deprived of it, we feel that we are dying. And that resonated with me because when we were in lockdowns during that whole period, when we were given no reason why this, what did you call it? That period was extended. What was it? The
state of emergency.
State of emergency. Why that was being extended, and we had to lock down and so on.
And it seemed to get extended just all the time, didn't it?
It did. Yeah. Well, I felt like I was dying. I remember I was at home and I felt like a caged animal. I hated it. I hated not being able to do what I wanted to do, or if I had to do that, I couldn't go to this place. I had to wear this on my face.
Couldn't go for a surf.
No.
Couldn't really do anything. Couldn't get out and go for a bike ride, jog.
And it really, really made me realise about my own personal freedom and how much I'd taken it for granted.
Yeah.
You want to be able to make informed medical decisions of your own body, don't you?
Absolutely.
You want, say if you're going to have shoulder surgery, you go into one person and they say, yep, you need to go in and have a shoulder reconstruction. You think, oh man, I don't really want to do that. I have the ability, the right to go and see another doctor and say, this is what this other doctor said. What do you think? I need a second opinion. Let's get a second opinion. All right, cool. Actually, no, I think we can do fix your shoulder with rehab. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So as a person, you should have the ability to go to various places and be informed and then make the right decision for you.
Yeah, and part of that would be you're going to sit down with your doctor, you're going to ask him some questions. You'll say that he might show you some scans or something like that.
Mm.
He'll discuss it with you. This is what we plan to do. This is the reason why. This is a percentage chance of success or failure. These are the possible, side effects.
Yep.
And you'll take all that information away and you make an informed decision, like so.
Yeah. I feel like that may have been taken away from us also at that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you go back to what we were talking about, I remember right at the start of it, right, because I could sort of see the way we were going in the early days, and there was one outcome that was going to save us. It wasn't public health. It wasn't, living well, eating well, exercising, all that sort of stuff. There was going to be one outcome that we're all going to essentially be asked to follow in order to make it through this thing. And I went to an Australian government website again. I'm a real Australian government website buff, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was, I can't remember what the website was, but it was the Australian government website, and it spoke about the development of vaccines. Because I was thinking, I wonder how long it's going to be before they develop this thing. Because I was not keen for it. And by the way, I did not take the vaccine, and there was a lot of personal sacrifice with that, but that was the choice I made. But I went to this Australian government website and it said, to develop a safe vaccine, it's generally accepted that a minimum of 7 to 10 years is required for initial testing, follow-up testing, safety data, whatever. I screenshotted that and I sent it to my wife. And I said, at least, it's probably going to take 7 or 10 years before this bad boy comes out. Within like a year, it was out. And I went to that same website and I checked it again, and the information on that page had changed. And it said something like, up to a year might be required to develop a safe and effective vaccine. And one of my big problems with this was the fact that this is a new type of vaccine that we've never done before. We had never done an mRNA vaccine in the history of man.
Yeah.
We had never used them. So for me, and I have a very slight medical background. I've got a science degree and I've got some postgraduate degrees in sort of nutrition, so not really mainstream heavy science, but I understand how to read a scientific article. And I thought, for me, that's the risk reward isn't there. So I was trying to make my own informed choice, like you were speaking about, CJ. And I'm thinking, well, risk of, as time went on, more sort of data was becoming available about the sort of person who was dying from it and all that sort of stuff. And the hysteria for me had died down somewhat because I was sort of choosing my sources. But I thought, for me, that's not a risk that I want to take, because for me, the risk reward wasn't there. And I just feel like every person should be allowed to make a decision like that based on the best available evidence they've got, and also their personal, religious, sort of ethical beliefs.
Yeah.
To me, that's medical freedom.
Yeah, and at that time, mate, you were sort of ostracised if you wanted to uphold those personal beliefs. There was what I think what's his name, that Dr. Matthias Desmet. And Dr. The guy who was on Rogan, they talk about
Malone.
Dr. Malone. They talk
McCullough.
about mass formation psychosis and how the population was convinced or gathered together under this belief, and anyone that stepped outside of that belief was ostracised. They were bad. They were germ infected. They were second-class citizens.
Yeah.
I even recall the mayor of Perth denied. He said the Sky Show, the fireworks show for Australia Day, was a vaccinated person only event.
Oh, like most things.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had a famous American grunge band who had a concert in the early days and said it was a vaccinated person only thing. I mean, so.
I mean, that was commonplace at the end, wasn't it? You couldn't go to the footy, or
no,
there was not much. You weren't going to any large gatherings or venues, or.
That's right, and I think that the whole indoctrination of people's minds through mass propaganda through the media really created that, what they call that mass formation psychosis, and it led me down the track of having a look at how obedience, not disobedience, is the greatest threat to our freedom. So us here, we disobeyed. We didn't wear masks. We didn't get vaccinated. we went to rallies and we went to protests because we thought that something was not right. And I think the question is a peaceful, prosperous society dependent on strict obedience to laws and mandates and dictates? And I come to the conclusion that it's not. I mean, I think laws and dictates and mandates destroy and suppress individuality, creativity, productivity, all those things that we did see get affected. Like our economy slid to a point that was disastrous. You know, and people
still
weren't
fighting back from it.
Yeah, and people weren't working. Mental health just down, went majorly the wrong direction. And this, I'll read you another quote, and I got this off that website I was looking at. This is from Primo Levi. You might want to correct me on the pronunciation there.
You didn't read Albert Camus when you were in high school?
No.
The Outsider?
No, but this guy was an Italian chemist and writer and a Jewish Holocaust survivor. And so this is what he read, and I love this quote. Monsters exist, but they are far too few in number to be truly dangerous. The most dangerous monsters are ordinary men and women, ready to believe and obey without asking any questions. Love that quote.
Yeah.
Because I know us in this room and multitude of other people around the world were asking questions and thinking, hang on, whoa, this is not right. But very limited people are dying. This is like a flu. How long did it take this vaccine to come out? All these questions were being asked. And even like reputable worldwide scientists and doctors, epidemiologists, all these people were asking questions, but then being shut down by the media. And now with the Twitter files, since Elon Musk's taken over Twitter, that's all been exposed that the US government employed the FBI to shut down and use mainstream social media platforms to shut down anyone who was a dissenter or who spoke against what they wanted to deliver. And that so even their freedoms, qualified people were being denied.
Yeah. Well, even your average doctor on the street, if you're a GP in Perth or Australia or, I don't know, America, Canada, any of the main Western countries, they weren't really free to take in all the information as it came and make their own recommendations based on that. That was essentially taken away from them. Maybe a few states in America it wasn't, but I know certainly in Australia, as a doctor, you weren't allowed to say, oh, well, I've actually read some really good studies on, you know, dare I say it, ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or vitamin D or whatever the case may be. Let's try this. That was grounds for actually being deregistered as a doctor.
Yeah.
I find that ludicrous.
That happened.
That absolutely happened.
Doctors were deregistered for, I think it might have been even vitamin C and vitamin D.
Yeah, none of it was a valid treatment. There was one form of valid treatment and that was it. And if you went outside of that, or if you wrote someone an exemption or something like that.
Well, it's a bit like going back to what you said got you banned from Reddit.
Yeah.
Some doctors were saying nutrition, exercise, vitamin D, and they were being deregistered.
Oh,
and that's getting back to is that freedom to transact.
Yeah.
That's part of that. It's the overarching thing. They've taken away that person's ability to transact.
Yes.
And it would have happened with vaccine mandates. You couldn't work.
Well, if you're an APRA registered practitioner, so doctor, nurse, physio, OT, you know, there's tons of them. The list goes on. Essentially, any sort of mainstream Western practitioner in Australia, then you fall under the umbrella of APRA, Australian Health Practitioners Registration Agency, or something like that. If you didn't get the vaccine, your career was over.
Well, that happened to.
And I can tell you that's the truth because it happened to my wife.
Yeah.
So my wife had been an occupational therapist for 17 years, fantastic practitioner, refused to get the jab, no longer can or will be an OT. Gone.
But the terrible thing about this is, mate, APRA are a board of bureaucrats, mate. They're not even health professionals themselves.
No.
It's been announced that they are just a board of bureaucrats making rules and implications on medical professionals' lives without any really qualifications themselves.
But if anybody should be allowed to make an informed opinion about a medicine, shouldn't it be a medical practitioner?
Yeah. So,
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
If the science is strong, they're going to follow it because they're not fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Exactly.
Done heaps of training. Yeah.
Show me the science and I'll follow it.
Yeah.
Show me the science. I would have followed it. There was none.
Yeah.
It was crap.
Yeah. And what sort of person are you going to follow or listen to? a medical professional who's dedicated their lives to the improvement of humanity and the care of humanity, or a grubby politician who's in it for themselves. And that's what I thought. We heard more from politicians about medical advice than we did from doctors and medical professionals.
Well, because they were gagged.
Yeah. And any muppet that came up and espoused or said what the government was saying were just muppets anyway. I mean, they were, man. I mean, what you're saying, Jonesy, about the not letting people transact and conduct business. I mean, are we heading down a tyrannical sort of society there? Is that like a Marxist sort of or communist sort of society that we're heading to?
It just allows people, as in the government or whoever doesn't like the narrative that you're talking about, to be able to shut down what you're saying. And then if they shut down what you're saying, like, okay, well, we're going to deplatform you. You kicked off Reddit. You can't, you're a nutritionist, but you're a low-carb, high-fat nutritionist promoting what goes against the food pyramid, So we don't like what you're saying. We're gonna deregister you as a nutritionist, and you can't do anything. Oh, well, that's how I make my money. How am I going to transact in the world? I can't, because I don't have the freedom, because you have, like Smithy said, not made the truth, but your truth is the truth, and we've got to follow that.
Yeah.
See, that removes that person's ability to make money and then transact in the world, which is what happened with the mandates, right? So you have to, I had to go and, for me to look after my family and keep my job, I didn't really want to get the vaccine, but I had to go and get it because that's what happens. My ability to transact would have been taken away, which I know is what happened with you guys. That's rough, right? Like personal sacrifices you have to make.
Oh, man, we both, myself and my wife, were not working and we had no income coming in for a while.
And that's difficult.
Super difficult.
And that ability to
that was super. I went to a pretty low place, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and transact in the world.
If it hadn't been for my community of strong friends, and I really found out who my friends were during that, I lost a lot of friends, and I gained some friends as well.
Yeah.
Really distilled my world, if you like, but that was a super tough time. And a lot of people went through that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of people on the other side of it, like yourself, went through it. I know countless people who were vehemently opposed to getting it, who felt that they had just no option.
Yeah.
Stories of people sitting in the chair sobbing as they're being injected.
Yeah.
That's not a free
No.
society where we have the right to choose, what our medical journey is.
Yeah.
And I've heard it, I don't want to harp on about this like vaccine part of it. We'll get on to some other parts as well because there's lots to get into. But I've heard this analogy of, it's like wearing a seatbelt. You don't mind wearing a seatbelt, do you? Because it, does more harm than good. Well, I don't know any seatbelts that will kill me when I'm not even in the car or I haven't been in a fucking car accident. Like, I've been a paramedic for a long, I'm not a paramedic now, but I was. I did my degree in paramedical science and I worked for the state paramedic service over in WA. So I've seen some car accidents and I've seen the result of seatbelt injuries. If you're in a high-speed crash, you get a seatbelt injury. They can be really bad. They can puncture lungs. It's quite common to have lacerated liver because of the rapid deceleration. You can get a lot of breakages and stuff. But essentially, they do more harm. They do more good than harm, right?
Yes.
I wear a seatbelt. I wear a seatbelt everywhere I go. What I know in my mind is that seatbelt is never going to injure me when I'm just driving. And it's not going to sneak up on me in the middle of the night and cause a blood clot in me while I'm lying in bed.
Yeah.
I can't say that about these jabs. They have known to be causing blood clots, anaphylactic reactions, all sorts. Like people have died from taking it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No doubt.
that
That's all coming out, mate. It's all coming out. And I mean, there was a great thing on YouTube just recently. I don't know if you follow this guy. What's his name? Dr. John Campbell, and he read out an Australian government document of the biodistribution data of the vaccine, which was released prior to the vaccine was released in Australia. So our governing body like the FDA, the TGA, knew that the liquid nanoparticles did not remain in the injection site.
That was the big selling point in the end. They only stay in the injection site.
Yeah. But you've got now liquid nanoparticles within 48 hours, and they cut off the testing within 48 hours, spreading throughout the body and to also like to major organs, mostly the liver. But then also the ovaries, the heart, obviously, which created your myocarditis and your pericarditis. The brain. It went to every part of the body and therefore produced that spike protein in every cell that it shouldn't have. So that accumulation in every part of the body grew over to 48 hours. So they stopped that test. They stopped getting those records after 48 hours. So no one really knows where the development of these spike proteins and to the intensity it happens over the 48-hour period, because it's not ever documented. But they knew this information before they released it into the public. And these things are coming out. So I love that the freedom of information avenue that the public have. And I did use the freedom of information during our lockdowns when the state of emergency just kept on seemingly rolling over. So I requested freedom of information. It took about 3 to 4 months to get an answer. And my simple question was, can you please show us the health advice that they often refer to warrant the extension of a state of emergency? And I got a reply back from the health minister, the state health minister at the time. I can't remember his name. But he said...
Cook?
Yes.
Robertson?
No.
Andrew Robertson?
Was it Andrew Robertson? Might have been him.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. They said, we don't have that information to give. They did nothing. It was a one-page letter. Thanks for your Freedom of Information Act. Information request. Considering your request, we do not have that information. So you'd think under a Freedom of Information avenue, they would be able to provide the health advice that they were extending these states of emergency, but they couldn't.
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty big thing, taking away your population's freedom to move.
Yeah.
It's not like a small little thing. It's probably one of the most important things in people's life is the ability to be able to carry on.
Yep.
Going out, catching up with friends. Like, people couldn't go to funerals. They couldn't go and see their loved ones die. At the height of it, you couldn't even touch your loved one.
Yeah. Well, there was that lady that couldn't cross the border from New South Wales to Queensland. She was pregnant and her baby died because she couldn't get hospital care. And her unborn baby died because she wasn't allowed to cross the border.
There were families separated who unfortunately were geographically separate when the hard borders went up.
Yeah.
Parents separated from kids, all sorts of crazy things. But
it was such a massive removal of our personal freedoms. And it first started, mate, the totalitarianism, the enslavement of a population starts first with enslavement of the mind. And that's what we saw. So we saw constant propaganda in the news. We saw a 24-hour news cycle of just Muppets sitting up there on the screen, 24 hours a day, giving us a number, a case number. And then you saw politicians come up on the TV every couple of hours giving their spiel. And it's like, this is just nonsense. Like, this is over the top.
Well, it's crazy, isn't it? You think about those numbers. We got daily updates, daily press conferences to tell us how many numbers of people were crook.
You couldn't escape it.
No.
It was total enslavement of the population's mind.
And that's why people were caught up in it. And that's why people were worried, right? But
of course.
So what's happening now? What if I was to get ill, what would happen?
Well, nothing. You can just walk around with COVID now.
Carry on, right?
Carry on. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, cool. So do we now look back on what we've done and go, was that a little bit of an overreach? Was that, or do people think, okay, well, what they did was correct in locking everyone down?
No, that's not.
Giving them some...
Because evidence now proves that lockdowns didn't work, but we kept on doing it. That's what I couldn't understand. So initially they locked us down and took away our freedom of movement under the impression that was going to reduce the spread of it, but it didn't.
So what happened was, I think it was 80% of transfer was in the house. So if someone was crook, you stay home, but no one else can go anywhere, can't go outside, can't get sunlight. Stay in the area where somebody has got it, and then everyone gets it.
Yeah.
Oh, but close the door. Well, what if you
You've
live
got
in a small
somewhere
house?
else to go?
What if you live in a house with one bathroom?
Yeah. So I mean, that may have contributed to it, but do people believe that? Okay, well, getting the jab helped, like slowed it down, or I'm not sure.
Well, I'll tell you my COVID experience. I had a really sore back for a day. By day 2, I reckon I could have gone for a run.
Yeah.
I didn't feel great. I never got a cough. I never got a sore throat. I basically got a sore body, and I felt tired. I slept a fair bit. I had some naps, had some afternoon naps. It was pretty good because I got my 7 days off work, so I got my positive COVID thing. And I got quite a sore back on the first day.
Yeah.
And by day 2, I was pretty good. So,
and in the end,
I mean,
most people are really good, right? Most people, if they're sick, they are going to stay home and get better. Nobody wants to be sick. I don't want to get anything. I don't want to get gastro. I don't want to come into my workplace and somebody be ill, have gastro, cold, flu, whatever it is, and pass it on. You know, we've got some good workplace laws where you can stay home. Sick leave, use it, right? So people aren't silly. If they're ill, sore back, chills, vomiting, whatever it might be, they're going to stay home.
There was no chance I was going out because I'm a polite, respectful person.
Yeah.
I don't spread my germs. Doesn't matter whether it's COVID, the flu, gastro, whatever. I don't come to work sick.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that do.
I think, mate, TJ, when you said, are we going to look back on that time and think, did we overreact? I think...
Well, that's what I mean. Did we overreact? Are people going to look back and go, did we overreact, or did some of it help and they got through?
Mate, I think we'll look back at it as that first step of enslavement. So that was mind control.
So you think they'll use that again? That'll happen again?
Yeah. It was a test case.
Yeah.
And what they've done now is that the second move to a totalitarian state is physical enslavement. So now, let me finish. You've just got over surveillance.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know, since in the last 2 or 3 years, you've noticed the amount of cameras coming up now, facial recognition cameras.
That's not COVID related though.
Well, that
would have happened. That's been happening for years.
I think you're right. It has been happening for a while.
Yeah.
It might have.
So there was over policing. So you saw particularly in places like Victoria, where the police force like beat people up, choked people out. They were walking the street without a mask on, shot them with rubber bullets.
Those rubber bullets, that's no joke either.
No, man. No.
That's not like some little pellet like your kid's gun that bounces off you. Those things break bones, fracture skulls.
What I'm getting at is just that these acts that we observed, and I think we are still observing. I mean, like being denied entry into some place because you haven't complied to something. These things are in place, and they're happening. Now we're looking at like a digital currency. I mean, this is another form of physical sort of enslavement.
Freedom to transact.
Freedom to transact. Like a digital currency, the platform, I've read somewhere that the platform that this digital currency is built upon allows for banks or whoever or financial institutions to monitor and control your expenditure.
That's what I mean, yeah. And you've spent too much on cigarettes. So we're shutting you down.
We're talking about freedom here. Where are we heading? I mean, COVID aside.
Yeah.
Put that aside. Think about they totally brainwashed our population to prepare them for what I see is total enslavement and a totalitarian state.
What I'm getting at is, do you think that people, now looking back, and maybe still too raw at the moment, but 3 years' time, 4 years' time, we look back and go, that was too much. That was a lot, right? And if something else was to happen, do you think we would fall back into the same problems? Or do you think we go, okay, well, we're a little bit smarter now. We've woken up a little bit.
Yes, I think you're right there. We've woken up a little bit to that whole viral agenda, because they tried with the monkeypox thing and people just like, fuck off. We're not going down this road again.
That was a failure to launch, wasn't it? Monkeypox.
Yeah. I mean, they've tried with other things as well. And I think now you're looking at the climate change agenda. And if we're looking at tyrannical conditions of just like, they tried it. I mean, we're looking at these 15-minute cities. So what sort of freedom obliging government or authority keeps people within a 15-minute radius or 20-minute radius of their homes under the guise of climate change? Because
is that what they're doing?
Well, they are. Oxford, the suburb or whatever you call it in England of Oxford, have put barriers, physical barriers.
So you can't get out of your 15-minute area.
No, you can get out. but
you need a
only,
permit.
only a certain amount of times a year you need a permit. And they're essentially trying to encourage these either 15 or 20-minute cities where you have everything you need, so healthcare, shopping, leisure, within a 15 or 20-minute, not drive, walk
Yeah, I get that.
from your home.
And that's not a bad idea.
Well,
To have the freedom to walk to places that you don't
Yep.
have to. I get that, but not being able to leave, that's not right.
Well, yeah, you're right. Your first point, you should have the freedom to walk to places within 15 or 20 minutes of
And I
time.
think that's cool.
But you should,
Awesome,
you should also
yeah.
have the freedom to go beyond that.
That's
And
right, yeah.
Without as many times as you
Yeah.
want and
Make
without
it-
being fined for exceeding those times.
make it as amazing and accessible as you can so that I don't want to leave, but give me the choice to leave whenever I want.
I didn't know they were doing barriers and
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's
That
bollards
sounds
and
some-
barriers that they've made on roads, and there's been mass protests in Oxford and other
is that right?
are they counties? Is Oxford a county or a shire or
Um,
whatever?
something like that.
City, whatever.
Yeah,
Oxfordshire.
They would do things like put flower planter boxes across roads.
yeah.
Put bollard. There's been thousands of people protesting, and they've done things like burnt down some of these bollards and smashed up some of these flower things.
So why are they not
But
wanting
essentially-
people to leave?
Well, for carbon. So they don't want people to be driving too much because we now have a climate crisis.
So you could leave, but you got to go on the train.
Yeah, I believe if you use public
Possibly.
transport, probably you could get out that way, but definitely not driving your own motor vehicle. So if you leave more than X amount of times in a year, you'll receive a fine.
So Victoria are looking at implementing 20-minute cities. So they're giving people an extra 5 minutes, which is great. But within 20 minutes, you've got everything within you. And, you call me a tinfoil hat or whatever,
I
but
was just going to say, is this a little conspiracy? Like,
no,
getting
they've
out
announced
of
it, mate.
those things.
They've announced it.
Look, you can get out, but you're not allowed. You wouldn't be allowed to drive your car every day 25 minutes. You would not be allowed to do that. You get fined.
why couldn't work?
Well, I think they give
That's
you seven.
right.
I think they give you something like 70 days a year. So you're going to have to start working from home, getting a job. They're talking about having employment, healthcare, retail.
Do I get an exemption?
Well, I don't know if you do, mate. Like,
Fucking hell! Right.
And
Cool.
and then we talk on the climate thing. These Dutch farmers, the Dutch government want to take away 3,000 farms which have been in people's families for generations, based on the fact that they're producing too much nitrogen and therefore contributing to climate change. So farmers over there, anyhow, I talk about civil disobedience. Farmers over there are protesting. And look at the protests in France now. The French government, although it's contributing billions of dollars to Ukraine in the war against Russia, however you want to define that, they're now saying that their people have to work from 62 to 64 now before you can retire.
yeah, that's been a big sticking point for them. We're 67 over here, aren't we?
Is it? Yeah. But the beauty of the French though, and kudos to them for getting together and
They can protest.
and protesting, man.
Yeah.
Like and that's the thing. Like civil disobedience takes a heroic act of someone, and I had to look into this, and it takes one individual or a handful of individuals to start a revolution. And people. The question is, how does that one person or group of people tap into the senses of others? Because everyone's waiting for everyone else to do something. Now, we will sit around and go, fuck this is shit. Well, let's protest about it. Oh, well, someone else will start it.
Yeah.
Especially Australians. We are so laid back and ridiculously apathetic.
Yeah, we are.
That
Well, it goes back to what Smithy was saying. We haven't really had our freedoms challenged.
No, we
all.
haven't. No. But it has to be like a mass. So that mass formation psychosis where the population is brainwashed works on the masses. So it takes a mass to reverse it. It can't just take individuals. It has to take a mass to reverse that tyrannical sort of brainwashing propaganda machine, and it's up to people to come together.
So I like that you've mentioned civil disobedience. So there's a very important distinction I think that we would make here is I don't think any of us are talking about doing criminal actions or breaking a law.
Exactly right, mate.
And
Yep.
we're not ever talking about violence
Yep.
or confrontation.
Yes.
But I think, a little tinfoil hatter called Martin Luther King, one of the greatest men in American history for black rights.
Yep.
Which I fully support. I support everybody's rights. Came up with this concept of civil disobedience. If you don't like something, don't go out and smash everything up and violence and war, but don't participate.
That's right.
If you don't like it, don't participate in it.
Or peacefully protest about
Or
it.
peacefully protest.
Yep.
Be disobedient, but don't be criminal and don't be violent.
Yes. I mean, here we go, 19th century American philosopher Henry David Thoreau. Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves. And even good old Arnold Schwarzenegger. Here's a quote.
Do the voice.
I can't. Break the rules, not the law. As you're just saying.
Yeah.
Break the rules, not the law, but break the rules. It is impossible to be a maverick or a true original if you're too well behaved and don't want to break the rules. Great quote.
Yeah, I love it.
And we're not talking about violence or
never,
being,
never.
Those sort of things. We're talking about having a conscience and somewhere like for me on that whole period of the 2 or 3 years, I don't know what it was inside me that made me act against what was being delivered to me, but it was just my conscience in the fact that something wasn't right. Something, and I've read that this is where individuals start to stand up and become dissidents and take action against tyrannical sort of regimes. Their conscience tells them that this is not right. And I vividly remember that, and if you deny acting within your conscience, if you deny acting once you've realised that consciousness, then you're a traitor to yourself.
Yeah, and to your society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I could not, and what I admire with you guys and the group of friends that we went through that journey with. No one became a traitor to themselves. No one backflipped on their consciousness. A few people had to, as you mentioned before, Smitty.
Yeah.
A few people were stuck in such a jam that to survive and put bread on the table and pay the bills, they had to.
Yeah.
But it went against their consciousness.
Yeah. And I would also add, I don't have any misgivings against someone who was lining up to get the jab. Good on you. That's awesome. You've done your own research.
Yeah.
I
That's
hope.
freedom to choose, right?
That's freedom. I fully support. If
Yeah.
every single person in the world except me wanted to go and get it, I would say fill your boots, go for your life.
Yep.
But you don't need someone to tell you.
I'm not anti-vaccine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying let's burn down the factories and stop the make it available to every single person, right? Knowing that every single person probably isn't going to take it up.
And they're going to make their informed choice.
Yeah, I think every single person in the world should eat really well and get sunlight and breathe fresh air and drink clean water, but I know they're not going to do it, and I wouldn't force them.
Yeah.
You want to sit on the couch and play Nintendo and eat Cheetos every day, fucking fill your boots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's very good, but I'm not going to force you. We didn't close down fucking bottle shops during this pandemic.
Mate, that was...
We didn't stop selling cigarettes.
We closed down churches.
But we closed down churches and we closed down fucking people going for a surf or, all these crazy things.
Yep.
Couldn't go out and...
The hypocrisy is crazy, isn't it?
The hypocrisy...
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know what alcohol does to you, but
Yeah.
knock yourself out.
Yeah.
Drink
we
as
left
much as you want.
Bunnings open, but we didn't. But we made a lot of Ma and Pa stores close.
Yeah.
Because Bunnings is essential for your hardware needs, but fucking, too bad if you own a little Ma and Pa hardware store, you're getting closed. Go to a restaurant, wear a mask when you get in there, but once you're seated, take your mask off. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Don't use paper money at the petrol station to pay for your things, but we'll sell you a magazine and a newspaper and all this other shit made of paper. The amount of stuff that was just mind-bogglingly crazy, it just didn't make sense. And I'll tell you, just said, I don't know why you didn't do it. I'll tell you why I reckon you did it. Is because you got kids. The reason I took the stance I did, which fucking nearly mentally ruined me, was because I got a little girl and I care about the world she grows up in.
Yeah, definitely, mate.
I feel like before I had kids, I was a much more selfish person. Whatever, I'll get by.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm like, I got a little girl. She's small. She needs to grow up in this country. And I love my country and I want to see it a really good country to live in because that's the country I grew up in.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the destruction of my country. I want to see it prosper and I want it to be an awesome, cool place to live, like the best country in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right, mate. And that my kids and their future was in the forefront of my mind. What sort of world do I want them to live in? And if I go against my consciousness and my beliefs and my stance here, am I then just as a mass part of the population contributing to this world where their freedoms are denied?
Yeah.
Are they going to have a vaccination to travel anywhere out of their own country? Whereas I travelled the world back in the 90s without any thought of any medical procedure to allow me to do so.
Yeah, well, there's still swathes of the world that I can't go to due to mandates.
Yeah.
You know, for a while I couldn't fly anywhere. I couldn't even leave my state.
Yeah.
Couldn't even leave my region for a while.
Yeah. And I haven't travelled in 2.5 years, nearly 3 years, and I'm now travelling in May to New South Wales to see my brother. And I'm really anxious about it. I'm anxious about the fact of getting on an aeroplane and just the whole travel thing now because I haven't done it for so long. Whereas back in the day when you're travelling, the process is streamlined. You know, you do it so often. Now I'm a little bit, I've got to check in here, do this, get my bags, blah, blah, blah. But what you were saying there, mate, it was interesting. Like you said that you had no qualms about anyone medically having the freedom to get vaccinated, and I was the same. And if we're going to sit here and sprout off about freedom and all that sort of stuff, we need to acknowledge the fact that, we were appreciated people having the freedom to choose to get vaccinated or whatever they wanted to do. Wear a mask out in the fresh air while they're walking on their own or driving their car by themselves. That's up to them. That's your freedom to do so. But what really fucked me off was I gave them that freedom, but they did not give me the freedom to make my alternate decision. My decision was opposite to theirs, but they refused to acknowledge me as a human being or go out with me or let me come into this restaurant because I chose my freedom. You know what I mean? So I found that was hypocritical if we're talking about hypocrisy.
Yep. We got told that we were the reason that everyone else's freedom had been taken off them.
That's right. It become the virus of the plague of the pandemic of the vaccinated.
I mean, before all this silliness, we always knew that herd immunity would be achieved at around the 80% mark, and that would come from either natural exposure or a vaccine. Then we got told that, if you had it naturally, that doesn't count. There's no
vaccine that was 100% effective.
No, you would get herd immunity. So, your population.
Yeah, but you needed the vaccine to be fully effective for that to occur.
Oh, yeah, you did, which it wasn't.
That's right, yeah.
But what we were what we knew before all this was herd immunity came at around 80%. You never needed 100%. But then the goals changed. I don't know if you guys remember an issue. It was 70%. We need target is 70%. Then things go back to normal. Then it was 80%. And they said, hang on, the 80% doesn't account for people who aren't eligible, like children and all that stuff like that. And then they obviously made a lot of children eligible, and babies and all that sort of stuff. And then it went up. But the narrative was always the anti-vaxxers. That's I've had a lot of vaccines. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I chose not to get the COVID vaccine.
Yeah. That was the other thing that was ridiculous, wasn't it? You got
labelled, mate, and
labelled that.
Words became weapons, and labels became weapons, and it was just easy to put someone in a box. No, you're an anti-vaxxer.
I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm a medical professional. I worked in the ambulance service for a number of years through some really bad flu. I can't say pandemics or anything, but some really bad flu seasons, arguably which would rival COVID. I never had a flu vaccine. Nobody ever asked. Do you know why? Because it's medical inconfidence. It's none of your business. Everyone's medical business is everyone's business now.
Yeah.
I had people pull me up on the street. Have you been vaccinated?
Yeah.
How about you going,
fuck off.
F off.
Yeah.
None of your business what I do. You do what you do. I'll do what I do.
Yeah. You had employees asking.
Yeah. We had a vaccine passport.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter just went for a job at a major chain supermarket a month or so ago after no mandates, and they asked her if she's vaccinated.
Yeah.
And she's got obviously a medical exemption, and she said no, she didn't get the job. But they're still asking. Yeah. It's none of your fucking business.
Yeah. We can't discriminate on anything in the world except...
Yeah.
Well, that's another hypocrisy, isn't it?
You can't discriminate on... gender or race or ethnicity or religion or anything like that, but you can fucking well distribute on medical choices.
This exact same supermarket just released their diversity and equity campaign where they welcome everyone in their store, their workplace. They got the rainbow flag there.
And so they
everyone's
should, right?
welcome. Everyone's included.
Yeah, so they should, exactly.
But why do they have to say that? Why do they have to say that?
Yeah, don't say it.
Everyone's welcome. But what have I got to put a big sign up to say everyone's welcome?
But everyone's
they should be.
Not, though.
Everyone's not welcome.
Because my daughter wasn't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they got to be seen to be saying
it's all bullshit. It's all fucking theatre, man.
It's hypocrisy.
It's all theatre.
Yeah.
The big question is that we're talking about these people, the population having this mass sort of psychosis. The big question to me is how do you awaken a population to the necessity of disobeying tyrannical laws and mandates? How do you awaken? So I've tried talking to some mates who I care about because I love them, and I'm trying to deliver this information, and I'm the worst person to deliver information because I get facts and numbers wrong, and I stumble over
Passionate,
words.
probably.
You're not a doctor. Are you a doctor?
Yeah,
Where'd you get your medical degree, mate?
yeah, but they won't listen, and the facts are there if they looked at an alternative source of information, which we have. And I'm not saying I'm the fucking guru, but I'm just saying, will you please have a look at this? But they won't even look at it. So the big question is how do you awaken people from a mass psychosis that we went through? Do you hit them with the truth? Do you give them like reason and evidence?
Well, it's a fine balance, isn't it? It's a super fine balance.
You know what fucked them up, mate? Fear.
Yeah.
Fear. The government
Yep.
used fear to control people's minds and turn people against each other and to make them not listen.
Well, fear is a weapon, isn't it?
It is.
You can control people's behaviour by using fear.
Yep.
We know people don't make rational decisions when they're in fear.
Yeah.
We've got that reptilian brain they talk about where you just don't make good decisions when you're scared. You get into fight or flight and you make rash decisions. And you obviously, as a primitive being that we still are, we want to be safe.
Yeah.
That's our desire. So if someone says, hey, it's safe over here, you go, yeah, fuck, I want to come over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you've got a population whose minds are filled with fear, uncertainty, confusion, they become immune to listening or to common sense. They become immune to reason.
And then throw in
They don't want to reason.
social pressure,
Yep.
Yeah.
throw in isolation,
You want to be part of the group.
throw in financial hardship,
Freedom to transact.
freedom to transact. Look, I mean, there's a lot there. We're only touching the surface, but I mean, I sometimes did and sometimes didn't wear a mask when the mask mandates were in. I wasn't that staunch dude that always didn't wear a mask. I did. Sometimes I wore a mask and sometimes I didn't. And the times I didn't was so bloody hard for me because I'm essentially a conformist. And I also don't like to make other people feel scared. You could see the terror in people's eyes sometimes.
Yeah.
I went to Woolies one time without a mask on, right? And it was bloody hard and everyone was hating me and staring at me. I was ready for a confrontation.
Yeah.
I was ready for someone to square up with me. And
Yeah.
honestly, that's how I felt.
Well, you saw videos, like in the US, people were assaulted in supermarkets.
Yeah. But the thing that got me was the look of absolute fear in like elderly people's eyes and stuff like that when they saw you.
Yeah.
You're like fucking patient
I
zero.
had people jump back because I had an exemption.
Yeah.
I've breathing issues.
Yeah.
So the doctor, cool, gave me an exemption. And people, one lady jumped back.
Yeah. I was refused service from some places. I was not allowed to enter.
Yeah.
It was really hard. So put all those things in, financial, social, fear-based. It was super hard to resist. Yeah. But I don't know how.
Well, here's a good quote, mate. We've talking about logic. I've been pumping out a few quotes. I like them. This one's a writer and a Holocaust survivor. And he's quoted this after visiting the Soviet Union in the 1960s. His name was Eli Wiesel. Logic will not help you here. You have your logic, they have theirs. And the distance between you two cannot be bridged by words. And how true is that?
That's what happened. There was no grey area in that time. There was you're on one side, and on the other side you're a conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer. Yep. And you, I'm not. I want to make some informed decisions. I want to make my own mind up. Don't get grumpy at me. But that's what happened, and there wasn't any middle ground. I didn't think.
Yeah.
And do you know who I blame for that? That sort of no debate, no middle ground.
I hope you say the media.
I'm going to say the media.
Yes.
And I'm going to say academia. As an academic, I'm not an academic, but I've spent some time in uni and I understand the art of academic debate. There was no debate.
Well, that's what science is, right?
Science is the art of polite debate.
Yeah, and you propose a hypothesis.
Yes.
And you test to see if that hypothesis is correct.
Yes.
And then if it is correct or it's not, you have the ability for peers in your area to attack it, recreate it, and break it down. And then
absolutely have
the debate about which side is right or wrong, or maybe there's not. Maybe there's a little bit of grey in the area. Like, yeah, you're both right.
Yep.
However, we didn't have any of that. That got quashed by those
Absolutely
people
did.
that were speaking up, and they were deplatformed. Their ability to transact and make money, that got shut down. They lost their jobs. Then they came out on social media platforms. They lost their ability to speak on those social media platforms. And those people were very highly rated people in their fields of that area of science that we should be discussing.
We had
Virology,
Nobel
immunology.
Prize-winning virologists, Nobel Prize winners, who came out and said, whoa, wait,
Yeah.
Conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, but we
tinfoil
couldn't
hatter.
listen to him.
Yeah.
Lost-
Nobel Prize winner, the highest
Yeah.
award in science. The
Yeah.
most you're not getting a Nobel Prize just for,
Yeah. And
Come
that,
on.
No,
something small.
what we'll do, we'll take advice from a computer nerd who made up a computer program.
and politicians and people that don't
Bill
have any
Gates.
background in what we're talking about. you
Yeah.
know?
So here's one of the big problems, and you just touched on it, is looking at numbers versus looking at data
Yes.
modeling.
Yes.
What does the modeling suggest?
Yeah.
We don't know. So we're going to go to the Doherty Institute. That's
Yep.
who Australia used for a lot of their modeling, because obviously it's a novel, novel virus. So we've
Yep.
never seen it before, so we don't know. So we're
And
going
a
to do
lot of the stuff that was, but the decisions that they made were based on this modelling.
on this
Well,
modeling.
and the now infamous one is that Matt Hancock in the UK, and his whatever university model predicted hundreds of millions of people will die from this virus,
yeah.
and that just scared the fuck out of everyone.
There's your fear again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Doherty modeling is frequently wrong. A number of times through history, they've done modeling and it's been crap, right? And the Doherty modeling in Australia, I think, I could be wrong on this, so I'm reluctant to say it, but so everyone check me, because you should always check everything that we say and make your own decisions. But I think it said something like 150,000 people in Australia could die of COVID. Now, obviously, we had less than, have we broken 1,000 yet? I think we were at 900 or something a while ago. I don't think it was very high.
Deaths.
Is it like 900 or something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would
I'm
have.
going to be Jamie saying look that up. But anyway, we didn't get anywhere. We certainly didn't have 150,000 deaths from COVID, but
With COVID or from COVID?
oh, whatever. But modeling, data versus modeling. I understand we use modeling when we have no data, but then as data comes in, get rid of the modeling.
Yes.
Because modeling uses inputs that a human being has put in.
Yeah,
And
assumptions.
what are his motivations?
Yeah.
If you use all of your parameters are worst case scenario, I can make a pretty bad model. If all of them are best case scenario, I can make a pretty good model. What are your motivations? What are you trying to achieve? Who's funding you?
Yep.
It's
We now know after all those leaked WhatsApp messages from Matt Hancock.
yeah.
You see those where he's talking to his other mate about, or when do we release the second strain? That should scare the shit out of him, or something like that.
Yeah.
The author of the book helped release these messages that he'd been sending through. Bill Gates owes me a big one, or something like that.
Oh, Jesus.
Getting them all vaccinated. Mate, there's
Who
so
was that
much
dude? Is
corruption.
that a piss? I saw
no, Matt
that
Hancock,
one. But
man. Matt Hancock.
yeah, who was he?
He was the health minister, I think, in the UK at the time under the Boris Johnson government, and he was the one that came out with all the recommendations initially for the mass lockdowns and
Right.
and all that. Yeah.
And he was saying that this second strain will scare everyone.
yeah.
That's
Well,
what
when
we
are we going to bring it out? When do we release it?
Is that a bit of a piss take or?
No, man. These are
No. I know what you mean, but in the context, is he?
you got to look at the
He's
other
legit.
messages around it.
Yeah, right.
It seemed a legit conversation. It's quite a egocentric sort of person.
Okay. So it wasn't sort of tongue in cheek kind of.
Nah, man.
I guess that's hard to gauge on a
And
text message, but
And I guess him being a part of a government, governments were using coercion, and force in some ways
yeah.
to remove people's freedoms during that period.
I'm not sure it's the whole thing was set up as a full blown, years in advance. But I definitely think that governments and people in that used what's the quote? Never let a good never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
They exploited the situation.
Yeah.
I don't know how conspiracy theorist you get, but
They were drunk on power, mate. Some of them just like drunk on power. I mean, you saw our premier get up on stage every day and he just looked so arrogant in the way he spoke to us like we were children. It's really fucked me off. So, you know, and you
been
read
quiet
here,
lately.
you know, yeah, he has been, hey,
Yeah.
really, really quiet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't noticed. I mean, and that was part of the thing was he was everywhere. And,
Yeah.
and you like you say, he
Yeah.
was important, right? Everyone looks to him every day. I'm watching his press conference.
Thanks for keeping us safe, Mark.
Yeah,
Stay strong for WA.
How many numbers have we got today?
Well, how's the clowns that got tattoos of him? And
Yeah,
people
good
that
luck to
got their vaccination, whatever they got, their whatever brand or whatever company they got, their pharmaceutical company got tattoos on their arms.
Did you see that thing? It was like a sign off for people at one stage. Like you get on, I used to spend a bit of time on LinkedIn. There was a bit of, I thought there was a bit of reasonable debate on LinkedIn because it's mostly professionals and a lot of sciencey people would actually engage in a little bit of debate on LinkedIn. But it became a bit of a thing on your bio. Be like, double Pfizer vaccinated, most recent update. You know, you put it in your bio, like, you know, your name, your qualifications, and your vaccination status.
Yeah. And mate,
What the hell are we doing here?
these are people what Oberon Herbert, who was an English writer and philosopher, called ciphers. So for a centralised government or a tyrannical or controlling government to work, they need a population of ciphers, CIPHER. And a cipher is those who lack the moral autonomy and critical thinking and can't act or don't have the courage to act or are afraid to think for themselves. So those people like that, and they obey the orders of political class, consuming propaganda, and you know, are dumbed down by all these modern sort of, you know, what we get on our phones, what we watch on TV, and stuff like that. And a nation of, here's a quote, Edward R. Morrow, another quote for you, American journalist. A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. And that's what these governments require, people to get, you know, tattoos on their arms about what Pfizer vaccine they got, or a premier who saved them from COVID, or putting on their LinkedIn account double vaxxed and all this sort of shit. These people that have become ciphers, they have become, and what you call them is what's the word? They like a mass of like clones, like or drones that don't think for themselves. They just go along like that movie 1984.
Yeah.
You know, are we heading down that track?
Yeah. Well, where are we headed? Like, I mean, it seems to me like we're headed towards more centralized control. Like we have all these large organizations with unelected officials who seem to be grabbing more and more power, which seem to be a big sort of precursor to loss of freedoms for us.
Yeah.
So one example would be the World Health Organization.
Yeah, the pandemic treaty.
So they've got this pandemic treaty that they're trying to get across the line. And as of the start of March, so a few weeks ago for us, they've released sort of draft 0 of this pandemic treaty. Now, Australia is a member of the WHO, and we're actively taking part in these negotiations. But essentially what the WHO wants to be able to do is to manage potential and current pandemics as part of this treaty. But I'll tell you what else is in this treaty, because I've read it. It's 32 pages, this draft 0. I read it the other night. It's an interesting, well, it's a bit of a dry read, but there's some interesting things in there. First of all, they want it to be legally binding. So if your government signs on to it, then they want that to be a legally binding thing that your country is required to do. They want it to be a whole of population approach. So to me, if they say whole of population, what that means is their recommendations will be followed by every citizen. But they don't just want to look after pandemics. They want to be able to forecast future pandemics and talk about strategies for that. They also want to control climate change, supply chains, animal health. So it's very wide-ranging. So to me, that might mean, climate change is contributing to, I don't know, whatever. So we need to do X, Y, and Z. But all of a sudden, my point is, you've got this group of unelected officials starting to dictate how we run our country, which is going to, by extension, impact on my life.
Yeah. Well, our country will lose its sovereignty, and the world will be governed by one world government.
So I was looking through the WHO list of financiers, for want of a better word, this morning on the computer, because you can get all their records of people who made their main contribution. So the second largest contributor for 18, 19, 19, 20, and 21, 22, I'm talking about years, was Bill and Melinda Gates.
Yep.
So that's a man who, look, a lot of people think he's the best man on earth and he's a philanthropist and all that sort of stuff, and make your own opinion on him, like do some research, and I've got my own opinions. But my point is, if Bill Gates is the second biggest donator, like countries seem to take their turns. I think one year the largest was the US, one year the largest was Germany, one year the largest was Great Britain. So maybe all the big countries step up and they obviously contribute a lot of money. But Bill Gates being the second biggest contributor, I would imagine would wield a very large amount of power within that organisation.
Absolutely.
Now, I never elected Bill Gates to meddle with how my country is run because I don't know what his motivations are.
Yeah.
Maybe they're good, but maybe they're not good. But my point is, how do I vote the cunt out?
Yeah.
Excuse me, we'll edit that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do I vote him out?
Yeah.
Keep it in there.
Yeah.
Because he is wielding an amazing amount of power.
Yeah.
Well, you are. It's not a conspiracy theory, and
It's
you
not a
are
conspiracy. Go to the
completely-
WHO website and look at it.
You are completely naive to think that for all the money that he puts in there, that he would have no influence.
Well,
I'm just going to put this money in there, but I trust that whoever's in that WHO is going to do the right thing. But if it's against what I want, like Bill Gates is the biggest landowner in America, he has bought up a ton of farms, and he's pushing hard on fake meat.
Yep.
Right? So you're naive or ignorant to think that he wouldn't have some influence on the WHO to reduce the amount of red meat and push his fake meat.
yeah.
There is no way there's no way he's going to contribute so much money to that organisation and say, no, that's cool. You go against what I've done. I've bought all this land. There's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yep.
That's not a conspiracy theory, and that is not. That's really naive. If you are
join
wrong.
the dots, man. Why are they now so heavy on fucking cattle emitting so many CO2 emissions, and then wanting farmers to reduce their cattle head per head cattle, whatever, and imposing extra taxes on them per head of cattle so that they do reduce them? You know, they're trying to eliminate the beef industry so that they can produce this fake meat for all of us. There'll be beef industry around, but they'll provide for the 1%, billionaires that are enforcing the rules upon us.
But that goes back to, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, your freedom to choose, right? So if you want to buy fake meat, go ahead and buy it. But people should be informed and make the decision to spend their money where they see fit.
Yeah, and look at the ingredients that they've seen on these fake meat things are just toxic. They're all unnatural ingredients.
Yeah. Even if you just don't want to eat the soy because you don't want to grow man boobs, that's start right there. But all the other stuff that goes into them is horrifying, and it's all genetically modified monocrop soy and sprayed with all sorts of pesticides and herbicides and all that sort of stuff. You don't want to be eating that stuff.
And going back to the WHO, the director general of the WHO, what's his name?
Tedros
Ghebreyesus, whatever, from Somalia. I think he's from Somalia.
Something like that.
I'd encourage people just to have a look at, and don't just Google, use another alternative source. Have a look at his history. Yeah. See where he comes from.
Yeah, I think he had a few human rights strikes back in the day.
And he's the Director General of the World Health Organization.
Yeah. I mean, look at another one, the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
I think everyone these days has probably heard of the World Economic Forum. Who elects those? How do I vote out Klaus?
Yeah.
How do I say, hang on a sec,
yeah.
You look a bit too much like Dr. Evil for my liking. Get out. I don't want you controlling my... Like, they came out and said, by 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
I don't want to own... You know what? I would own nothing if every single person in the world decides that they'll all own nothing. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to own nothing if I'm the 99% of people that own nothing and then 1% own everything.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
No.
If every single person on Earth says we're all equal, nobody has any extra status and we'll all share, I will engage in that.
Yeah.
But if they say, no, well, that's most people, but then...
Sounds very communist, mate.
Some of us need to own everything. I'm not down for that.
It does,
that's socialist. That's
well,
communism, socialism.
In theory, it works, doesn't it? Communism.
Yeah, on a bit of paper, it works really well.
everyone is equal, everyone gets the same thing, but
Yeah.
it just doesn't work in real life.
And the thing is, though, touch on the World Economic Forum there, Smitty. You discuss any of these things, like you just mentioned about you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. You'll eat less meat. You'll eat insects for protein. You won't drive a fossil fueled car.
Yep.
You'll
rent
everything will be
everything.
electric. You live in a smart city. You mention these to normal folk, and you're laughed at.
Yeah.
But they've actually documented it in the World Economic Forum webpage. You go onto it.
Can I read you guys something? It goes for 2 or 3 minutes. It's long, and I'll probably butcher it, but it's from the World Economic Forum. It was prior to their 2016 meeting at Davos,
Yep.
where they came out with this, you'll own nothing, you'll be happy. Do you want to hear this
Go for it.
totally dystopian nightmare of their vision for 2030?
Go for it.
2030. So
And this
7
is,
years
hang
away.
on, this is off their website.
No, it's from a World Economic Forum contributor who took this to the World Economic Forum and they discussed it. And then after that, the World Economic Forum released a video, like 8 things you should expect from 2030. And
Okay.
it was strikingly similar to what this is. But
Right.
this is from a person from the World Economic Forum.
Okay.
So again, unelected official. How do I vote these guys out?
Mhm.
Do you guys know? How do you vote them out?
No idea. I didn't
Well,
even know.
they're
I
a
didn't even know
private-
who elected
they're a
them.
private
impossible, right?
organisation.
They
It's
have
not-
a hell of a lot of sway.
Yeah.
So this is their vision. I'm going to butcher this. Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city. Or should I say, our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. We have access to transportation, accommodation, food, and all things we need in our daily lives. One by one, all these things became free, so it ended up not making any sense for us to own much. First, communication became digitised and free to everyone. Then, when clean energy became free, things really started to move more quickly. Transportation dropped dramatically in price. It made no sense for us to own cars anymore because we could all have a driverless vehicle or flying car for longer journeys within minutes. We started transporting ourselves in a much more organised and coordinated way when public transport became easier, quicker, and more convenient than a car. Now, I can hardly believe that we accepted congestion from traffic jams, not to mention air pollution from combustion engines. What were we thinking? Sometimes I use my bike, I don't know how they would use their bike because they own nothing, when I go to see my friends. I enjoy the exercise of the ride. It kind of gets the soul to come along on the journey. Funny how some things never seem to lose their excitement: walking, biking, cooking, drawing, and growing plants. That makes perfect sense for us and reminds us how our culture emerged out of a close relationship with nature. In our city, we don't pay any rent because sometimes someone else is using our free space whenever we don't need it. My living room is used for business meetings when I'm not there. Once in a while, I'll choose to cook for myself. Blah, blah, blah. They talk about making pasta. I'll go on. My biggest concern is all those who don't live in our city, those we lost along the way, those who decided that it became too much with all this technology, those who felt obsolete and useless when robots and AI took over big parts of our jobs, those who got upset with the political system and turned against it. They live a different kind of life outside the city. Some have formed little self-supplying communities. Others just stayed in an empty and abandoned house in a small 19th century village. Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy. Nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere, everything I do, think and dream of is recorded. I just hope nobody else will use it against me. All in all, it's a good life, much better than the path we were on, where it became so clear we could not continue with the same model of growth. We had all these terrible things happening: lifestyle diseases, climate change, refugee crisis, environmental degradation, completely congested cities, water pollution, air pollution, social unrest and unemployment. We lost way too many people before we realised we could do things differently.
Wow.
That kind of sounds dystopian to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old so-and-so who is not hip with the times, but people living in big cities who own absolutely nothing, and then this rabble of people who want to live close to nature and want to live free outside.
Mate, show
just
me the
living
road to the
like
self-supplying village.
Oh, I mean, I'm living in
Eh?
the country already. I'm not staying in
Man.
the city, but the part about
Wow.
everything I do, think and dream is registered, no privacy.
I don't like that,
Owning
but
nothing.
that's cool. It's
Hey.
one of the trade-offs is kind of what he's saying.
But also, just
But they're
those.
kind of selling that as like a good thing.
Man, that's
I don't know.
that's just brainwashing propaganda, mate.
Yeah.
And the things that you listed there towards the end, what were the things that they suffered in the previous life? Just can you read those things out again?
Oh, like the things that were happening to
Refugees.
facilitate this change.
Yeah.
It was environmental. So it was lifestyle diseases.
Yeah. Oh, surprise,
Check.
surprise. Yeah. Check.
Climate change. Check. Refugee crisis. Check.
Check.
Environmental degradation.
Check.
Check. Congested cities.
Check.
Water pollution. Air pollution. Social unrest. Unemployment.
Check. Check.
And so all of those things are going away if we have these
Smart
own
cities.
nothing smart cities.
But isn't it interesting that these things that we just listed now, we're seeing more of? We're seeing supply chains depleted. We're seeing refugee crises in particularly European countries. We're seeing this list of things to set up
But that's
this
nothing.
new world that they want to bring in.
That's nothing new, and it won't.
Yeah,
It won't change in the future. No matter you bring in 15-minute cities. That's
Maybe
not
it
gonna
will, but they're all
change.
just living in the rabble outside the city, so you
Well,
won't know
yeah,
about it.
it's a Mad Max kind of thing.
I better get myself some rad motorbikes to ride in
Yeah.
the dystopian wasteland of the country. I don't know.
Man.
I don't know. It sounds really.
It does sound far out, but
It sounds far out there to me.
I think
But I
some of the
value
stuff.
privacy. I value privacy. I do.
Yep.
I think one of the biggest problems with if we move into like a central bank digital currency, which Australia is currently trialling, is privacy. Because once you have a fully digital currency, there is no privacy of any of your expenditure. It's all on the public record.
Yeah.
Like I'll read you another small little quote here. As hundreds of governments explore fully traceable, programmable and permission-based digital currency, every citizen will have a digital wallet pegged to their digital identity. And then if you further go on, the requirement for a digital identity will be your medical history and vaccination status, your credit history, your social media activity, and your purchasing behaviour.
Wow.
Now, to me, that sounds quite all-encompassing in terms of all the things that I hold private.
Yes.
If I want to spend all my money on comic books, which I don't, but it's just a first thing I came up with, that's on me. I don't need to tell people about it.
That's right.
Maybe I love, I don't know, Lego.
Yep.
I don't love Lego. I know guys that do. Maybe I want to spend all my money on Lego. I don't know. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, the issue is that permission-based, where it said
Yeah.
so traceable, programmable, permission-based.
permission-based.
So traceable. So first of all, so every single, obviously, transaction you make is traceable because, of course, how could it not be? Because it's digital. So I know now everything I buy on my credit card or electronically is traceable. I get that.
But it's not immediately able to be shut down.
No.
So you can buy it. It's traced, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're saying this permission-based.
Yeah.
You could probably go into the whole bit of how if you use your FPOS card, how it works. It goes to the bank. The bank then gathers them all up, sort of. At the end of the day, then pays the individual companies.
Yeah.
Central banking means that middleman of the bank is skipped and it goes straight to that one, and then they have the ability to shut that down immediately.
Yeah.
So whatever I buy at the moment can't be shut down.
Yeah.
Because it goes off, goes to the bank, they hold it for the day, then at the end of the day they kind of ferry it out to the different companies. This one just will go straight there. So if I'm about to buy my grass-fed organic beef, because I eat a lot of that, it's a permission-based system. You've had too much of your grass-fed organic beef. No, Chris, you cannot buy that. Shut down. You're gonna stopped, denied right then. That can't happen at the moment.
No, you could go and buy all the meat you want. Like, I mean, I did a carnivore diet a while ago. I was eating a shit ton of meat every week.
So because of
they might say, well, meat, carbon, methane.
You've used too much of your.
You're having 200 grams a week, sunshine. That's it.
And that's also a flawed metric.
Exactly, yeah, of course.
Methane-based argument.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and permission-based, so they can just.
That's what I mean. Permission-based.
So I mean, look at the trucker protests in Canada.
Yeah.
Do you see what happened to some of the people that funded the truckers?
Yeah, that's right.
They got their bank accounts closed down.
Got their bank accounts closed.
Yeah.
Well, that might be all right in a society where you also have cash. Maybe some of those people also had a safe full of cash at home. They go, oh, yeah, my bank account's been closed for a while. I've got some money. I can still live. What if you move to a digital currency and there is no cash? They say, oh, cash is dirty. Cash is obsolete. We're digital, right? We're digital. That's it. There is no plan B. You could just get shut. Hey, I saw you protesting the other day. Boom, shut down for a week.
Yeah.
Shut down for a year.
Saw your face on a facial recognition camera protesting against a government policy. You're shut down.
Freedom to transact
what do
is
you
gone
do?
right there.
Pay the bills? Nah. Put food on the table?
Yeah.
What about they say, oh, because it's talking about linking your social media activity and your purchasing behaviour. Oh, we're getting a bit of a picture of you here, Rooster. You're a bit of a conspiracy theorist, aren't you? I think we're going to take away all of your discretionary items and you can only pay bills, your mortgage, and some basic food. Whatever, like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, mate, we're talking about
But we're trialling it in
freedom.
Australia at the moment. So we're trialling
Commonwealth Bank and ANZ.
banks, ANZ and Combank are currently trialling it, along with, I think, 140 other institutions within Australia. But all around the world it's being trialled, and it's pretty clear that it's probably going to come in some format. But if you value your privacy and you value cash, start using cash.
Yeah.
Vote with your feet.
Yeah. I mean,
write a letter.
You mention this to people, and people who are sort of like into the cryptocurrency thing say that, well, banks have to do this to compete with the decentralization of cryptocurrency, which I don't really understand. I don't really get crypto, to be honest with you. But this is their argument putting forward to say that banks have to do this to bring in a digital currency, a decentralized digital currency to compete with.
But this is completely centralized. This isn't decentralized.
Yeah, this is
centralized.
centralized.
This is all of it goes through one
central bank digital currency.
Yeah,
CBDC.
right. Yeah. So crypto is decentralized.
You can't. Yeah.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
So like with, I know a little bit about crypto. I'm definitely no expert, but look at like Bitcoin, for example. There's these miners, these computers all around the world, which are scattered everywhere, are all solving the same thing at the same time. They all have to. The ledger is the same.
Yeah.
So if anyone finds a discrepancy, then everyone else picks up on it. You can't just close down one central server and then, Bitcoin's cooked. They're all working together. It's fully decentralized.
Yeah.
And some cryptocurrencies are centralized, but a lot of them, their big claim to fame is that they are completely decentralized. There is no central, mainframe server or whatever that just controls everything like a central bank where they just go, right, well, we're going to do this. It's like, well, you're not going to do this, and it's decentralized. So the different, it's like power, like centralized versus decentralized. Like I'm all for getting rid of all these giant, faceless, unelected organizations that hold swathes of power and giving more local power that I can vote on at a level that affects me.
Yeah.
So I don't feel at the moment, like even when the federal election comes up, that I really have much of a say in what happens. I'm usually always voting for a minor party.
Yeah.
I know they're never going to get in.
Yep.
And the difference between Labor and Liberal, which are the only two parties that can really form a government, really is very similar these days.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm all for the opposite, like maybe giving local governments a lot more power and having a smaller voting footprint, if you will.
Yeah.
And if I start to realise that the one I'm in is sort of not aligned with my values, I'll go and live somewhere, where it's more closely aligned or whatever. But at the moment, it seems like we've got this top-down sort of authoritarianness coming to the world, and there just doesn't seem to be much of a way to sort of counteract it apart from civil disobedience. If you don't like it, don't participate in it. If you don't want central bank digital currency to come in, don't use it when it comes out. Use cash.
Civil disobedience.
Don't break any laws. Like, don't go and hurt anyone. Don't.
It's not.
Anyone.
Yeah. Violent protest.
Don't go and attack a policeman. Police are good people. They're trying to protect the community, whatever. Just don't obey.
Yeah. It's putting your money into things that you think are worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly.
It's living where you think's worthwhile. Yep. It's making things work for you.
Yeah, go and meet your local farmer or where your food comes from, or like we buy some of our food from a cooperative. Stops me going to Woolies and Coles because I don't like them.
Yeah.
So a lot of our food we buy through a cooperative where you put in an order, and there's literally a cooperation of, I don't know, maybe 100 families, and they all put in a giant order, so you get the purchasing power, and then you go to someone's house and you pick it up. You've all got your own bags, and you can either pay for someone to bag it up for you, or you can go and contribute to the labour of it, and then you get a slightly reduced price on all your groceries. And it all comes from like organic, ethically sourced sort of places. It's not a solution to everything, but it's one little example of like a community-based thing where you're supporting something that you like, rather than, well, I don't really like you, Coles and Woolies, because you made me wear a mask and you wouldn't let me in, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And we need more people to be talking with their money.
Yeah, that's the only thing really that vote with your wallet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And more people doing it. It's like you say, like government. It just seems that at that federal government level, they seem to be ever so much more powerful and intrusive in our lives.
Mm.
You know, what you're saying is what we need is more localized government, not control, but government, where people have more of a say with the way their community is run, not a government dictating from the top about how you should live your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I think really upset a lot of people, that governments are getting bigger and more ever controlling and powerful.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere here, it says, when governments become so big and powerful, are they the parasite that consumes the host? And the host being us, the populace?
Mm.
They're not working for us in the end, are they?
No.
They're working to be re-elected. They're working to have their interests. They're always being lobbied by
Yeah.
big pharma, whatever it is, big
Yeah.
ag.
Well, lobbyists have they're a big problem in politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a lobbyist, you have got a lot of money to give.
Yeah.
And you want some stuff in return.
Yeah.
It's not like Joe Voda, me, who writes my local MP and says, hey, man, I'm really not loving this.
Yeah.
Then he's got old, farmer or whatever lobbyist next to him going, hey, man, I'll give you $3 million for your next election, but I'm going to expect some favours in return.
Yeah.
He goes, well, I don't really care about Smithy writing any stupid letter about, doesn't.
Yeah, but that's why maybe things need to change, and it needs to be more at a local level, and you have more local government people.
Yeah, possibly.
More local politicians.
Yeah.
Well, politicians. Bad word.
One of the US founding fathers, Patrick Henry, in 1775, before the Civil War, he was quoted, and it's a famous quote of "Give me liberty or give me death." And then there was this author, Aldous Huxley, and he wrote a book, you might have heard about it, called Brave New World.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be pretty good. It's like on the lines of 1984, and I think he wrote that book in 1930s. But then he revisited the book in the 60s, and he gave a quote then in relation to that founding father's quote. It says, "Give me television and hamburgers, but don't bother me with the responsibilities of liberty." I found that like such a contrast in the concept of freedom in the old days compared to modern days. And he went on this Aldous Huxley in 1961 when he made that quote. And he predicted this in the 60s. He said, "There will be, in the next generation or so, a pharmaceutical method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak, producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire cities." So just go on your 15-minute city thing there. He continued, "So that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it, because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing enhanced by pharmaceutical methods, and this seems to be the final revolution." Man.
Did you see during the depths of all the craziness we went through, at one stage they were suggesting that anti-vaxxers should be treated as essentially mentally ill, should be medicated? There's some doctors actually saying that in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy.
The funny thing is, if you look at the demographic of people who chose not to receive the jab, they're usually actually quite educated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, mate.
Yeah, which is a funny one.
And you don't often come across a person that didn't get jabbed who regrets not getting jabbed. You know what I mean? Geez, I wish I got that needle.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? Look at places like Florida, who didn't really enforce the mandates and the masking to the same degree, and their rates of everything was pretty similar.
Yeah. Or wasn't it also was it Switzerland that didn't do the mass lockdowns?
Sweden.
Was it Sweden? Sweden. Yeah. Didn't do
Yeah, Sweden, they were strong on it. Yeah.
And their curves just went, I think everyone just sort of got it and got that herd immunity, and so cases dropped massively. And I think there was some scientists, it might have been not Matthias Desmet, another real popular scientist that spoke out, and he talked about vaccinating a population during a pandemic was the worst thing you can ever do. What was his name?
I think that was pretty much in like every virology textbook leading up to.
Yeah.
Gert van den Bosch.
Yes. Thank you, mate.
Oh,
Gert van den Bosch.
CEO of Pfizer or something, or second in charge of Pfizer at one stage or something. Is that
Van den Bosch? Was
No,
he?
I don't think he was.
No?
No.
I'm getting confused with someone else.
Gert van den Bosch is a world-renowned fucking epidemiologist or virologist or whatever.
Well, he was saying that then the virus can mutate and
which
get
it did.
get around
Yeah.
the vaccine that you'd initially planned it for.
Yeah.
It then gets around it, and then
Yeah.
the vaccine's essentially useless because it's mutated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Should we wind?
Yeah.
Are we free to wind things up? Or you got anything else, Smitty? Because you had a lot of stuff there to talk about.
Oh man, I got heaps, but
3-parter.
look, we've probably gone pretty deep. I hope we haven't put a lot of people off because we've said some pretty confronting things here today. But I think our motivation is that, like we spoke about, we're obviously trying to encourage people to go and do some research as to where we're going and have a actively participate in what our future looks like, aren't we? So when we were talking about like how do you motivate or influence people to go and have a look at what's happening, I guess this is our attempt to do it, isn't it? Like through this little podcast, through our small listenership, we're trying to put forward some sort of rational arguments that people can go and chase.
Information is power.
Information is power, but
if you
just be careful about where you get your information from, because we know that one of the biggest things that we probably haven't gone into deep is just censorship.
Yes.
Like, I mean, we know that search engines can censor and direct where your searches go, and they can also disappear things.
Yeah.
And it's quite hard now to get stuff that is reliable or plausible when you're looking for your sources.
You need to be real discerning.
Well,
with what
it's a known fact now. It's a known fact that those major social media platforms have censored information against whatever narrative that they've been told by government agencies and so on. So it's a fact that if you jump on, just a Google search, you're not going to get accurate information. You're going to get contrived information or information that is wanted you to see.
You've got to do a little bit of digging.
Yes.
And then you've got to get some keywords, and you've got to go to a less censored browser. I mean, that's the state that we're in now. People just take that, oh, yeah, we know Google censors, it's for our own good. Well, like, I'd prefer to be able to, like take some out there thing like, I don't know, flat earthers. I'm not a flat earther, right? I don't believe that the earth is flat. I've been up high in the sky. I've seen the curvature of the earth, whatever. But if someone wants to believe in flat earth and have a website about it, fill your boots, man. I don't care. Well, you're not going to ruin my life by believing that the earth's flat. You believe that if you sail long enough for one direction, you're going to fall off the edge of the earth. That's your belief. Go do it. Like as long as you're not inciting violence, or you're not inciting harm to children or something like that.
Yeah.
I believe that everyone's idea should be allowed to flourish on the internet, and I don't believe in censorship.
Yeah.
I don't believe in it, but be aware that censorship is everywhere.
Yeah,
it's in our
we
media,
haven't even
it's in our
touched
social media, it's in our search engines.
Yes, it is, and we haven't even touched on freedom of speech.
No,
and that is one thing that is just being attacked massively now. So, in the workplace or even at a social function, I can't say certain things without being accused of an ist. You're a racist. You're a sexist. You're in something ist.
Yeah, you're anti-science.
Yeah, I can't. I have alternate beliefs, but that's not allowed anymore.
Yeah,
and I can't speak them out. And particularly in the workplace, the workplace has gone mental. With if I speak my mind, if I walk out on a welcome to country and say, look, I don't need to be welcomed to my own country. I was born here. This is my country. I don't need to be welcomed to it.
You'd be sacked, I would say, or
I'd probably be
heavily
penalised,
reprimanded,
or my actions would be deemed as you're racist. But I'm not racist. I've got great Indigenous friends, and I uphold their history and their culture. It's a beautiful culture, and
it's amazing. They managed to live on the earth for I don't know, is it 100,000 years or whatever, and not fuck it up.
But even a lot of Indigenous
they lived with nature. Now we live against nature.
Yeah, and a lot of Indigenous leaders will actually even talk against the welcome to country, saying that this is just tokenism. We don't need this in our organisations or whatever. And but then if I speak out about it, I'm reprimanded. I think the freedom of speech is, language is powerful.
Yeah.
If you can control language, you control the people.
Yeah, actions are more powerful though, don't forget that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, people have got to be aware of, there's a lot of junk science going around now. There's a lot of science that is absolute. So when we the last few years when we came to all this craziness, I'm a bit of a nerd and I don't mind using like PubMed and like scientific, search engines to look for stuff. One thing I noticed happening, right, I got very interested in ivermectin at the start. Like right at the start, I thought, oh, this looks really promising. And there was a study released by, I think it was Melbourne Uni maybe or something like that.
Yeah, early on.
Early on.
Was
Like, I mean, like early 2020, like maybe April 2020 or something like that. And I thought, wow, this looks really good. So I started reading all these papers about the use of ivermectin as an antiviral. Oh, this is amazing. Like, we don't even need a vaccine. This is going to be great. And then what I started noticing is all this science started to get done around it. It's what I call junk science, right? So like science can be polluted really easily. And I'll tell you how they do it is that the sort of pinnacle of good science is you want to look at like a large scale meta-analysis which looks at lots of different studies. And then you get a picture of the efficacy or lack of efficacy or something. If you want to pollute that, which I think is what they did with ivermectin, they had some absolutely compelling studies where you look at this study and you go, wow, this stuff really works. You take, 0.4 milligrams per kilo a day for X amount of days, and it's got amazing antiviral properties, and the recovery rates are a lot better than the placebo group and even better than the vaccine group. You go, wow, this is awesome. But then if you want to pollute that, what you do is you start doing all these really crap studies. You do terrible methodology. You do the absolute wrong doses, way too low. And then you roll them all together and you go, oh, well, we've looked at it in a large-scale meta-analysis and it's inconclusive. You go, well, it's inconclusive because someone's paid for all these junk science studies to be included into this whole thing. So, like, be discerning where you get all your information from.
Yeah.
Go in, dig into it, read. Don't read a study that had 12 people in it that went for 2 weeks with no control group, single-blinded, because it's junk science, right? Look at a proper scientific study done with proper methodology that's been peer review is a bit dodgy these days as well because peer review is a whole nother thing. But like I just hope people today go away.
Look at the conflicts.
If everything that we say is super confronting and you're really angry with us, I get that. But go away and just research like one thing that we spoke about and really try your best to research it and look at all the different strains of information and just see if it gels with you and see if there's anything there that resonates. And if not, that's fine. Maybe we're wrong. I accept that maybe everything I think about is wrong and my opinions change on a daily basis, but I'm pro-freedom and...
but prove it to me.
Prove it to me. Send me something. Send us something on Instagram. Send us something on the email, whatever, and change my mind. Prove to me why I'm crazy that I think that we deserve a certain amount of freedom, liberty. We'll go from there.
Because you're a human being, mate. It's your right. It's your right as a human being.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I hope my daughter grows up in a world where she's allowed to travel and express opinions and ideas and live an essentially free life.
Yep.
Not a life without laws and all that sort of stuff. Like just a free life that's respectful of others.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
He's done it again.
Well, I was going to take him over. I was going to ask if I could finish off today.
Yes, please do.
Because I've been sprouting off a lot of quotes. I thought this is a perfect quote.
It could be up over 20 quotes
You
today.
have had some good... No, I like it. I love it.
Yeah,
it's good.
I love it. I love it. All right, I'll finish off with this. All right, we're going to finish off?
Yes, we will.
Yeah? All right, we'll say goodbye now.
See ya.
Good chat. From Oberon Herbert. Time is a great magician, and succeeding generations will either press steadily on to the system that is the perfection of force or to the perfection of liberty. On which side do you take?